I never thought the words "dress like a lady" or "you're fired" would come out of anyone's mouth, let alone my boss's. But the moment those words landed, everything I knew about myself, my life, and my future started to crumble. My name is Jason, and I'm 31 years old. I've always been the type to stay late at the office, fix everyone else's mistakes, and keep my head down. My friends would have described me as quiet, reliable, and maybe a little boring. I took pride in blending in. In my tailored gray suits, no one looked twice at me. I was just another office worker in the endless rows of cubicles, and that suited me just fine. Our company was a rising marketing agency, specializing in high-profile campaigns for luxury brands. Competition was fierce, expectations were brutal, and everyone knew that making a mistake could cost you your job. For years, I managed to stay off my boss's radar until one day, the numbers for my team's biggest project slipped. Veronica, the firm's fearsome director, summoned me to her office. Her office was a sharp contrast to the sea of beige outside: dark wood, floor-to-ceiling windows, heavy curtains, and a single orchid on her desk. The mood was ice-cold when I stepped in. Veronica's reputation was legendary. Stories of her cutting words and swift firings kept everyone in check. But none of those stories prepared me for what she said next. "Jason," she began, her voice smooth as glass, "I've been watching your performance. You're talented, but you lack presence, authority, the ability to stand out." My mouth went dry. I tried to nod, to find words, but she didn't wait. "I'm giving you a choice," she continued, eyes fixed on mine with a force that made my knees weak. "If you want to keep your job, you'll accept my challenge. You'll spend the next month presenting yourself at work as Jessica, dressed as a woman, polished, confident. Or you can pack your things right now." The silence after her words was deafening. I felt like the walls were closing in, my thoughts a swirl of disbelief, fear, and something else I couldn't name. I thought of my bills, my empty bank account, the years I'd invested in this job. My pulse thundered in my ears. I tried to laugh, to tell her she was joking, but her expression never wavered. That night, I lay awake in my apartment, the city lights painting cold patterns on the ceiling. I couldn't stop replaying Veronica's ultimatum. Every time I pictured myself in women's clothes, a rush of shame and disturbingly curiosity twisted in my stomach. I remembered moments I'd never admitted to anyone. A fascination with the way silk dresses shimmered, a secret envy when I watched Emma, my girlfriend, putting on her makeup. Memories that made me wonder if some part of me had always wanted this, even if I was too scared to say it out loud. Emma and I had been together for 3 years. She was warm, sharp, and effortlessly stylish. We met at a friend's wedding, danced until dawn, and fell into a relationship that felt easy until the last few months. My long hours, her growing restlessness, and our unspoken fears had built walls we didn't know how to tear down. Now, Veronica's challenge threatened to shatter what was left. The morning after the ultimatum, I sat across from Emma at our cramped kitchen table, watching her stir sugar into her coffee. She was talking about a weekend getaway she wanted us to take, her words light, but her eyes clouded. Guilt stabbed through me. How could I tell her that in a few hours I'd walk into work dressed as Jessica? That I'd agreed to something that could destroy everything we'd built? I left for work wearing my usual suit, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone. Veronica's text came just before I reached the elevator. "Your new wardrobe is in the third-floor lounge. Don't be late." Every step toward that room felt heavier than the last. I opened the door to find a rolling rack of clothes: blouses in soft pastels, pencil skirts, dresses in fabrics that caught the light. A vanity waited in the corner, its surface crowded with makeup I barely knew how to use. There were high heels lined neatly below the rack, each pair looking impossibly delicate. I sank into the vanity chair, heart hammering. My hands hovered over a cream-colored blouse, the fabric slipping like water between my fingers. I told myself this was just survival, that I could do this for a month, keep my job, and go back to normal. But even as I thought it, a part of me wondered if normal would ever be enough again. I took a deep breath, picked up a tube of lipstick, and started. The first time I stepped into the office as Jessica, I thought my heart would explode. My reflection in the lobby's polished glass walls almost stopped me cold. The light blue blouse hugged my shoulders. The black pencil skirt ended just above the knee, and the small heels clicked sharply with every step. I kept my head down, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. My hair shoulder-length auburn wig Veronica had chosen swayed gently against my cheeks, every brush of synthetic strands reminding me this wasn't a dream. The receptionist glanced up as I entered. Her eyes widened for a split second, then she gave a tight smile. "Good morning, Jessica," she said. The way she said it, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, sent a shiver through me. Every moment felt electric, like the entire floor would burst into laughter at any second. But people didn't laugh. They stared, yes, but in a quiet, measuring way, like they were trying to figure out if this was a prank or something they should start getting used to. As the day crawled by, I found small moments of calm. The sound of my heels on the office floor became less terrifying, more like a drumbeat of determination. My new clothes pinched and shifted in ways I wasn't used to, but I started to notice how my posture changed, how I sat straighter, walked with more care, spoke more deliberately. Lunchtime was the first true test. Veronica had scheduled a team lunch at a trendy cafe, and the moment I walked in, conversations at other tables dipped. Our group sat at a long wooden table, Veronica at the head, eyes flicking to me every so often. My teammates tried to act normal, but their nervous smiles and darting glances told another story. "So, Jessica," Veronica said suddenly, her voice slicing through the awkward chatter, "what's your opinion on the Greystone account? Think you can salvage it?" I swallowed, the entire table waiting. I pushed aside the swirl of fear and forced myself to focus on the campaign. "The messaging is outdated," I began, voice shaking. "We need to reframe it, target a younger demographic, modernize the visuals." As I spoke, the room fell silent, not with judgment, but with something like interest. When I finally stopped, breathless, Veronica gave a small nod. "Not bad," she said, her mouth curving ever so slightly. A ripple of relief spread across the table. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something dangerous. Pride. But it wasn't just at work that things were changing. At home, Emma grew more distant. She noticed the subtle shifts, the traces of foundation I missed when wiping it off, the scent of perfume lingering on my skin, the slight sway in my hips I couldn't seem to unlearn. She asked questions I dodged. She studied me with a wary concern that made me want to confess everything and run away all at once. The suspense gnawed at me every morning. Would today be the day Emma followed me to work? Would someone take a photo and send it around the office? Would I slip up, stumble in my heels, and confirm every whisper behind my back? One afternoon, a new layer of terror arrived. While I practiced walking in the lounge before going upstairs, the door burst open. It was Sam, one of the firm's junior analysts. His eyes went wide as they fell on me in a pale pink dress and matching heels. For a second, we both froze. "Jason," he gasped, his voice high and panicked. I felt dizzy, my hands reaching for the vanity behind me to stay upright. My secret, so carefully guarded, threatened to spill out like shards of broken glass. Sam looked between me and the rack of clothes, his expression shifting from shock to a cruel kind of glee. Before he could speak again, Veronica appeared behind him, her voice calm but deadly. "Sam, you're needed in the conference room. Now." He scurried out, shooting me a last, fearful glance. Veronica closed the door, her eyes locking with mine. "This is exactly why I told you to be careful," she said coldly. "One mistake, Jessica, and everything, your job, your relationship, your life could fall apart." Her words struck harder than any slap. That evening, back in my apartment, I sat on the couch in sweatpants, my mind spiraling. I felt the constant weight of pretending, of the small moments that betrayed me. The flick of my wrist, the softness in my voice, the way I admired Emma's dresses when I thought she wasn't looking. I looked at the empty spot beside me, wishing Emma would come home early so I could tell her everything. But part of me feared what she'd see if she looked at me too long. The next morning, I found myself lingering over my reflection longer than I should. The foundation evened my skin. The mascara darkened my lashes, making my eyes look wide, vulnerable, and a little fierce. The fitted skirt made me feel powerful, but exposed. Each layer I added made it harder to tell where Jason ended and Jessica began. At the office, the whispers started to fade. People began treating Jessica as if she had always been there, asking for help on projects, inviting me to meetings, even complimenting my work. But I felt the tension ratchet tighter each day, like a spring winding itself inside me. Because no matter how well I played the part, I knew the wrong slip would reveal everything. And then, just when I thought I might have a handle on this new life, Emma called me at work. Her voice was sharp and strained. "Jason, we need to talk. Tonight." My stomach dropped through the floor. The hours after Emma's call felt endless. My hands trembled on the keyboard, typos multiplying until I gave up pretending to work. Every tick of the clock was a hammer in my chest. I replayed every mistake. The smudged mascara Emma must have seen, the scent of floral perfume I forgot to scrub away, the softer tone I'd started using even at home. At 6 sharp, I stepped into our apartment. Emma sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, eyes dark and unreadable. My heart thudded against my ribs, so hard I thought she might hear it. "Jason," she began, her voice quiet but deadly, "why does our bathroom smell like lavender powder? Why do you have receipts for women's clothes? And why do you look different when you think I'm not watching?" I opened my mouth, closed it. The words were buried under a mountain of fear and shame. Tears stung my eyes as I dropped my briefcase to the floor. I've been trying to keep my job," I said, voice cracking. "My boss gave me an ultimatum. Dress as Jessica or get fired." Her eyes widened, disbelief warring with horror. "Your boss made you do this?" I nodded. At first, it felt like punishment. But then, I hesitated, the truth burning in my throat. Then it felt right. Like I was finally being myself. The silence between us stretched until I thought it would swallow me whole. Emma's eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can be with someone who's been lying to me." I wasn't trying to lie, I pleaded, taking a step closer. I was trying to survive. And somewhere along the way, I started to like who I was becoming. She shook her head, standing abruptly. "I need time," she said, brushing past me, her perfume lingering in the air like a ghost. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. I sank to the couch, the apartment impossibly quiet. My eyes fell on the vanity table I'd set up in the bedroom. Foundation bottles, lipsticks lined up like soldiers, a pair of heels I'd left by the bed. I couldn't look away from them. They were the symbols of the life that had torn everything apart. That night, I barely slept. My dreams were fractured, Emma's eyes full of betrayal, Veronica's voice whispering that I'd never be enough, the stares of strangers that felt both threatening and exhilarating. The next morning at work, the tension only grew. Sam, the junior analyst who'd seen me in the lounge, kept watching me with a smirk that made my skin crawl. Every time I walked past his desk, his eyes flicked to my skirt, to my legs, to my face. I could almost hear his thoughts. Then, just before lunch, it happened. I was walking down the hall, balancing a tray of coffee for a team meeting, when my heel caught the edge of a carpet. Time seemed to slow as I stumbled forward, the tray tilting, hot coffee sloshing over the cups and onto my blouse. The gasp of onlookers filled the corridor. My wig shifted, sliding dangerously on my head. In a panic, I dropped the tray and grabbed at the synthetic hair, but it was too late. It slipped off, falling to the floor. The corridor was dead silent, eyes locked on me as I stood there, exposed. For one terrible moment, all I could hear was my ragged breathing. Then Sam's voice rang out, high and cruel. Well, looks like Jason's little secret is out." A ripple of murmurs spread through the office like wildfire. My face burned as I scrambled to snatch up the wig, pressing it to my chest. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. And then, through the crowd, Veronica stepped forward. She moved with deliberate calm, her heels clicking authoritatively on the tile. She reached me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Jessica," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the corridor, "go fix yourself up. You have a presentation in 20 minutes." A stunned hush fell over the crowd. I blinked at her, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. Her eyes met mine, steady and unwavering. She was giving me a choice, I realized. Run and let fear destroy me, or face them all and prove who I really was. My hands stopped shaking. I straightened, holding my head high. "Yes, ma'am," I said softly, but with a strength I'd never heard in my own voice before. I walked to the restroom, ignoring the stares. Inside, I cleaned the coffee from my blouse, adjusted my wig, reapplied a thin layer of foundation. My reflection looked fragile but fierce. I breathed deeply, feeling a strange surge of pride. I was done running. I stepped into the conference room minutes later, the scent of strong coffee and stale air filling my lungs. A dozen eyes flicked up as I entered, curious, skeptical, some downright hostile. But I kept my chin high. My heart thundered, but each step felt surer than the last. Veronica stood at the far end of the table, arms crossed. "Jessica, you're late," she said, but there was a glint of something approval, maybe in her eyes. I nodded, set down my laptop, and began. My voice trembled on the first few words, but soon it settled into a steady rhythm. I moved through the slides, outlining a bold new strategy for the Greystone campaign. I caught glimpses of surprised nods, raised brows. The confidence I'd been forced to fake was becoming real, moment by moment. Halfway through, Sam leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "So, what are we supposed to call you now, huh?" he drawled loudly, making a few people snicker. My hands clenched on the remote. For a moment, panic threatened to swallow me. Then I looked him straight in the eye. "You can call me Jessica," I said firmly. "And if you have a better idea for saving this account, I'm all ears." Silence spread across the room. Veronica's lips curled into a small, dangerous smile. "That's what I like to hear," she said softly. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. When it ended, people gathered their things quickly, some offering tentative smiles, others avoiding my eyes entirely. But I saw it in their faces. Respect. Or, at least the beginning of it. I returned to my desk, head spinning. My phone buzzed a message from Emma. "I've been thinking. Can we talk tonight?" My pulse leapt. I typed back quickly. "Yes. I want to explain everything." But before I could catch my breath, Veronica appeared beside my desk. She glanced at me, then at the curious faces still lingering. "Walk with me," she ordered quietly. We moved down the hall, her heels striking the floor like drumbeats. She didn't speak until we reached the empty lounge. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "You did well today," she said finally. "Better than I expected." "Thank you," I whispered. "But don't get comfortable," she added, her voice hardening. "This is just the beginning. If you want to keep your job, if you want to keep becoming Jessica, you'll need to prove that today wasn't a fluke." I swallowed hard. "I understand." She leaned in, her gaze piercing. "And Jessica, choose who you want to be. Because the longer you hesitate, the harder this will get." Her words lingered in my mind long after she walked away. I packed up my things, the office quiet around me. My reflection in the darkened elevator doors was a blur of foundation and fear, mascara and determination. When I stepped outside, the evening air was cool on my skin. I caught sight of myself in a passing window. Jessica, not Jason. I expected to feel terror, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. This was me now, messy, complicated, but real. My phone buzzed again. "Emma, I'm home. Waiting." The cab ride felt endless, my thoughts tangled with hope and dread. I pictured Emma's face, the hurt in her eyes, the questions she deserved answered. But for the first time, I was ready to tell the truth even if it meant losing everything. As I stepped through our apartment door, I found her sitting on the couch, eyes red from crying. She looked up, searching my face for someone she recognized. I took a deep breath. "Emma, I began, voice soft but certain. There's so much I need to tell you. About Jessica.
About me.
She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. Then start. The words came pouring out, the ultimatum, the fear, the thrill, the way dressing as Jessica felt like unlocking a door I'd kept shut my entire life. Emma listened in silence, her expression shifting from confusion to pain to something like understanding. When I finished, she reached for my hand, holding it tightly. I don't know where this leaves us, she whispered, tears falling freely now. But I don't want to leave. Not yet. Relief flooded through me, mixing with fear of what tomorrow might bring. Because Veronica's words still echoed in my mind. Choose who you want to be. I knew my choice would shape everything: my career, my love, my future. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to choose for myself. What happens next? Does Jessica find acceptance? Or does everything fall apart? Tell me what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what happens next.